Well, it's great to see all of you jumping in here this afternoon and morning in some places around the country, and so thankful for the opportunity to welcome you to this edition of the FCCI Pathway to Purpose webinar today. We're featuring Dr. Paul White in the first of a three-part monthly webinar series centered around practical strategies that will result in traction toward important goals of employee engagement, retention, positive work environments, and increased productivity. I'm Ken Powell, your host for today's webinar. Now, if you jumped onto this webinar live stream just a few minutes early, you've seen that FCCI provides a variety of opportunities to engage with other Christian business owners and leaders. In fact, we believe you'll receive tremendous benefit from this year's international conference at Dove Mountain in Tucson, Arizona, and welcome you to register for that. That's September 17 through 20. And if you love golf, enjoy international travel, and find joy serving others, we still have a few open slots, and you can join a small group of business leaders on a trip to Guatemala City and Antigua. That's coming up March 3 through 10, so register soon. You can find more information about FCCI on our website, about events, global, and join this global movement of servant leaders from all around the world. We are so thankful to have some of you joining us here. We've already seen some of you coming in to the chat from all around the world. Great to have you here. If you get a chance today, jump onto our website and take a look at our business leader groups, the FCCI community platform, which we call Connect. And of course, in all of it, our goal is to provide you with leadership inspiration, training, networking, and expanding your potential to operate a company for Christ and influence others to do the same. And to that end, today's webinar brings a wealth of knowledge and practical strategies to improve the health of relationships within the context of your business. Many of us have benefited from the life-changing insights of the 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And it's from those core tenets of healthy relational development that Dr. Paul White and Dr. Gary Chapman released the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, which has sold over 550,000 copies now and has been translated into 25 languages. Paul, it's an honor to welcome you to the Pathway to Purpose webinar. And as someone who's read the book and has recently completed my MBA, my Motivating by Appreciation inventory, I am so thrilled that we're delivering this outstanding training content through this webinar series. And
Well, thanks for having me, Ken. I'm glad to be with you all.
It's great to have you. Thank you. We've been looking forward to this, and in our conversations leading up to today, of course, we've talked about the fact that FCCI has been committed to helping business leaders fully deploy into their God-given calling to serve Him in the marketplace. And Paul, you've had a great opportunity, just tremendous opportunity to be a strong influence through your calling as you've been interviewed by BBC News, Entrepreneur.com, Fox Business. Let's see, you mentioned Fast Company, Fortune, and there were others on the list, but most importantly, you've been speaking and training business leaders and kingdom influencers all over the world. So the question we like to ask as we get started, Paul, it's a question that stems from our core values, who we are as an organization. So tell us about your God-given calling into this important work that you're involved in, or stated another way, Paul, what's your why?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you gave that question to me ahead of time so I could reflect on it a little bit. I know the why, but I wanted to be able to communicate it clearly. You know, Ken, I'm a servant of the King. And I'm called, as we all are, to be stewards of the talents, training, experience that God has given us in our lifetime. And, I grew up in the context of a family-owned business, and my dad always talked about, look for the need that needs to be met, and that's an opportunity. And so throughout my career, I've sort of looked for needs, and that's included evaluating students with learning difficulties, and then consulting with family-owned businesses and business succession. And then more recently, how to help people show authentic appreciation to one another and create a positive, healthy workplace. And for us as followers of Christ, I really believe the 5 languages are a practical way to show the love of Christ in daily work life relationships. And that's really my desire for those of us who are in that setting. And so
Yeah.
I'm just pleased to be able to join with Dr. Chapman. It's been a great relationship with him. He's a tremendous godly man, and it's just a privilege to work with him.
It's awesome. It really, it sounds like I'd received a quote this morning from an FCCI group member. It's an Os Guinness quote, and it says, "Become an entrepreneur of life and see all of life as an enterprise transformed by His call." And it really sounds like you're just living into that, and very thankful that we get to be a part of that and hear from you today. And now, as I get ready to turn things over to Paul here, let me just give you a quick reminder that we would love for you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you do have questions that you'd like to submit to Paul, that you would utilize the chat function, introduce yourself there, and as you submit those questions, just put a Q at the front end of that question, because then we can actually just do a search through the comment stream and find those questions easily, and then pull some of those in for the Q&A at the end of the webinar presentation. So with that, Paul, I'm going to just go ahead and turn things over to you.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Well, welcome you all, and hello to my FCCI friends. I'm glad to be back with you. And so let's just dive in and talk about how to create a positive workplace environment through authentic appreciation. And just a little bit more about me. I am a follower of Christ, and I'm pleased and thankful for His grace in allowing me to know Him. I happen to be a psychologist as well. That's not always viewed positively, and I understand that. I'm not always pleased about it as well. So some of the things my colleagues say. I grew up in the Midwest, and I live in the Midwest now, so I'm pretty straightforward and practical, and just tell you what I think, no hidden meanings and all that kind of thing. Um, and I like to have fun, and I think we learn better when we do have fun. So let me just share this first. Here's a sign put up by an organization: cheer up, at least you have a job. And that was a message a while ago. Now we're on the other side, but the guy says it's not exactly the sort of morale booster I had in mind. And we need to be thankful that we have employment and a job, but that's not necessarily real motivating for us. So we want to learn how to get past that. So I want you to think about this question. I want you to think, what's the number one factor that affects how much people actually enjoy their jobs? And I'm going to give you two hints. First, it's not money. And most business leaders sort of go that way initially, lots of times. But we need to understand that what motivates people and what makes them feel valued and appreciated are two very different issues. Earning a living, earning more money, maybe some other kinds of benefits can be motivational, but that does not necessarily mean that you feel valued because of that. And in fact, we have decades of research that show that money is not a very good long-term satisfier or motivator even. And in fact, one survey looked at and talked to managers and found that 89% of them think that when employees leave for another job, they're leaving for more money. The problem is that's not true. Only 12% of employees who are leaving say that they're leaving for more money. Now, they may get more money, but that's not the reason that they're leaving. We'll take a look at that here in a second. So sometimes it's hard for those of us that are entrepreneurial and enjoy making a good living. That doesn't make sense, but you need to understand that not everybody is like you and thinks differently. And in fact, recently, we had this event or sort of period of time called the Great Resignation, where over the past 12 to 18 months, a lot of people left their jobs. And interestingly, MIT, the Sloan School of Business, did a study, and they found that company culture was actually over 10 times more likely to predict somebody leaving and companies losing people than compensation. Not 10 percentage points more, 10 times more likely. And if that doesn't grab you, I don't know what will, because let me tell you what, it is the truth, especially, and I would say even more so for younger employees and team members, that culture issue is huge for them. And if the culture isn't what they desire and look for, it sort of doesn't matter how much money you pay them, they're not going to stick around. Now, the flip side of that is just recognizing people for good performance and all that is also not what makes people feel valued and enjoy their jobs. And you might say, well, why are we talking about this then? I thought that's what we're talking about. Well, I want to clarify that when we talk about this, employee recognition, which can be a good thing if it's designed well and implemented consistently, which are two big ifs, is not the same as authentic appreciation. And so we're going to sort of briefly touch on that in the training that we do with team members and leaders. We go sort of more deeply into the differences, but it's sort of like this. This guy says, every time you do something right, I'll punch your rewards card. And when you reach 10,000 punches, you earn a high five. And some recognition reward programs are like that. You have to do a lot of little things to get not much else, which really we found creates more sarcasm and cynicism than motivation and a sense of satisfaction. So research has shown that over 90% of all companies and organizations in North America and in even Western Europe have some form of employee recognition program. It may be as small as an automatic email on your birthday, but some are very, more well designed and full. But we know that most employee recognition programs don't work in this sense. They don't work in making individuals feel appreciated. And part of the reason is that's not what they were designed for. Employee recognition programs started back in the 50s and 60s and then sort of continued to develop since then, really designed to improve performance. And like I said, when they're designed and implemented well, they do that. But that's different than somebody feeling valued. And that's important to know, even for your high performing employees or salespeople. They may, really enjoy the recognition and rewards for performance, but there's often still a question about, do they really value me as a person? And, one study a few years ago found that 65% of North Americans report that they've received no recognition or no appreciation at their workplace in the past year. When I first saw this, I'm like, how can this be? Because we have all these employee recognition programs. But I think the key word is that they haven't received it. It's sort of like nowadays, I have grandkids that live in other states, and I'll send a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. If they don't get it, I sent it, I meant well, but it doesn't impact them because they didn't receive it. I think we're doing things and sometimes try different things that really don't hit the mark. And so it's like they didn't receive it. And so I think that's the explanation of that. Now, I'm sure you all are healthy, great leaders, as are your team members, but let me cite this. I want you to think about what percentage of managers believe they do a pretty good job of recognizing employees for work well done. Okay, let's think about it. Pick a number. Okay, it's actually 51%. This is across a number of companies. And I like this number because it's realistic, right? It's not 90% say, oh, I'm doing a great job. About half say I'm doing okay. All right, so there's some room for improvement. But the challenge is that only 17% of the people who work for them think the manager does a good job of recognizing them. So we've got this disconnect between the manager and their employees' experience. And that's really the gap that we want to fill. And so think about this. This sort of ties back to what we talked about money. What percentage of employees who quit their jobs voluntarily cite a lack of appreciation as a key factor for their leaving? Okay, I mean, what do you think? Well, it's 79%, almost 80%, or 4 out of 5 employees who've left say that in follow-up interviews or their exit interviews say, I really didn't feel like anybody cared about me, valued what I did, and so I'm going to go someplace where they do. Again, it's not money, it's about their experience with other people. Now, interestingly, the Boston Consulting Group did a survey of 200,000 global employees, gave them a whole list of different things and said, which factors really contribute to you enjoying your job and feeling satisfied. And I mean, I could not pay for, I don't have enough money to pay for this kind of marketing, but feeling appreciated at work was found to be the absolute number one factor that people identified as contributing to them enjoying their work. So, there's more and more data in our book. The second chapter, it's really the return on investment of appreciation. We have over 50 research citations that cite these kinds of things. Now, we've been talking about job satisfaction and so forth, but that actually leads to the issue that a lot of people, especially a lot of business leaders, misunderstand the goal of appreciation. And they think that the goal is to make people feel good, which is a reasonable, sort of deduction, but that's actually not uh, uh, our goal. I mean, we would like that. We want people to feel good and feel happy and so forth. But the goal of appreciation for us as we work with companies and organizations is to create a healthy, well functioning organization. I often use the image of oil in a machine. You can have a very precise, well honed machine that's just, uh, beautiful to watch. But if it doesn't have oil or a lubricant in there, it creates friction, it sticks, it creates heat, sparks, and I think that's true for organizations that don't have a culture of appreciation. That it just creates heat. Things don't work as well as they otherwise might, and so that's sort of the role of appreciation to help the organization function well. So what happens is when people feel valued and work together, tasks get done, goals are reached, team members work together well. There's less of that conflict and competitiveness, sort of negative competitiveness. There's a more positive cooperative environment. Um, Individuals are motivated to grow, develop, and do their best. Clients, vendors, and strategic partners have positive experiences with you. We've got research that shows that customers' service ratings go up when team members feel valued. And clearly, we've all experienced where we've called in or gone into a place and the person serving us didn't really seem to want to be there or too happy about what's going on, and we just have a negative experience or don't get an answer. And that diminishes when people feel valued. And the other part is that problems are addressed and challenges are overcome. One of the things that goes down when people don't feel valued is creative problem solving, because creativity and problem solving takes energy, time, and commitment. And if you don't think anybody cares, you're not going to invest that time and energy. And you'll just say, "I'll let somebody else deal with it," or you hand it off. And so, again, we've got a lot of research that shows that turnover goes down, uh, um, absenteeism goes down, less employee theft, all kinds of practical kinds of things happen when team members really feel valued and appreciated. A lot of times, I'll be talking and people say, "Well, okay, net it out, Paul. What's really the primary difference between recognition and appreciation?" And really, Dr. Chapman and I believe that recognition in the workplace is a good thing, and it's mainly focused on performance. That's You set up some goals, you monitor them, and then you reward them for reaching those goals or going towards them. Good thing, but we believe that employees are people, and that the appreciation is about a person. I think the COVID pandemic really pointed this out to us, that uh, the sort of the intersection between work and life, that your employees are people and life affects them and work affects life, that we all have value regardless of our performance level. And I think as Christians, we really understand this better than anyone, that we're created in the image of God. He loves us, he values us, he wants us to value one another. And yes, work has to get done, and we need to do so in a profitable way. But there are times when we're not at our best. There's a lot of sickness going around, and some people are trying hard. But I have a team member out today that she just, can't function well, or we have things going on in our life. And it doesn't mean that we cease to have value as an employee. It's just that we have to look at other areas. And so appreciation is not just about performance. And so let me just give you one example, and we can do a lot. But think about something that you value in a team member that's not necessarily related to performance or on their performance evaluation. Most of those kinds of things are tasks. Personally, I like to work with cheerful people more than grumpy people. And so I value that. And I'm going to take, this is me, I'm going to take a B or B plus sort of skill level person that's cheerful, positive attitude than an A level person that is a pain to work with, because that wears you out over time. And so this is where we can see that appreciation really, together with recognition, can fill in the gaps, that it's not just about performance. So let me just say that we found that there's really four core conditions for people to truly feel valued. Because if these recognition programs, we have them, they aren't working, what needs to happen for appreciation to hit the mark? First of all, it needs to be regular. What does that mean? It means different things in different settings and different relationships, but it's clearly more than once or twice a year in their performance evaluation, right? I mean, and it depends on your relationship, how much you work together on a day-to-day basis, or maybe you see them just like once a month in a committee meeting or a team meeting. So that's going to be different, but it needs to be more than just once in a blue moon for sure. Secondly, the communication needs to be in the language and actions valued by the recipient. Key word, recipient. It doesn't matter what makes you feel valued. It doesn't make a difference what makes you feel encouraged. It's what makes them feel valued and encouraged. And so that's an issue in our culture. We have a hard time with taking on other people's point of view and accepting that. But that's really the goal here. And that's why we really focus on communicating people's languages and actions of appreciation that they value to their team members as well as their supervisor. Third, it needs to be personal and individualized. I was told a story about this leader who had a young guy. His name was Jason, and Jason did this project and did it well. And the leader, who in this case happened to be a guy, said to his assistant, he said, "Hey, Janice, I want you to go tell Jason what a great job he did on that project and how much I really appreciate and value it." And I'm like, dude, get out of your chair or pick up the phone or whatever, but don't send it in directly. And the other part is, it's good to send out, sort of group emails, way to go team, we met our goals for the quarter. But that doesn't really speak to the individual who maybe stayed up late putting in the data to get the report done or to make sure that the product got to the client. We need to really talk to the individual about what they did versus the group. Group stuff is a good start, but it doesn't really get the job done. And the last condition is that it needs to be communicated in a way that's viewed as authentic. And in fact, that's sort of one of the big complaints about employee recognition, that it just feels very generic, impersonal. We do the same thing every quarter or year or whatever for everybody. They get the same thing. It doesn't have anything really to do with me. And so people tend to discount it. And in our training, we go through what makes somebody question authenticity or genuineness, and how do you deal with that. But let me just say this. If you're struggling with truly appreciating somebody, don't try to fake it, because that will not go well. It will undermine the trust and basis for relationship that you have, and really create problems in other ways. So you sort of wait and learn, and we have all kinds of videos and blogs and stuff to answer all these kinds of questions. And we'll talk some more next week as well about this. It's sort of like this guy. He gets this award, not our worst employee. The company said, well, we got to put out an award this month to somebody. And he says, just the same, it's nice to get an award. Man, what a sorry place that guy is in. He's willing to accept that he's not the worst employee. We want to get past that. We're not just going through the motions and just doing things just because the system is there without any meaning. So one of the things I had to get past this, I'm a psychologist, and we're trained to do research, and I've done some, fairly significant kinds of things in a small way. And you want to find something, deep and meaningful. And the problem is the 5 languages, they're not that complicated. I mean, intellectually, it's not that tough. Applying it is more difficult, but I had to get past that. This is pretty basic here. And the first core principle is that not everybody feels appreciated in the same ways. And I've asked people about that, and everybody agrees to it, at least intellectually. They assent to that. But if I watch you or your team members throughout the week and how you communicate encouragement or appreciation, pretty much most of us use the same one or two things with everybody. So our actions really say, oh, I think these hit pretty much everybody, right? And we know that that's not true. And in fact, uh, listen up, y'all, because this is important. Most leaders, including you, believe that for their team members, words are the main way they feel appreciated. I got it. That's sort of a cultural kind of thing, at least in the US and North America. But the reality is, for over 50%, over half of your team, words are not the main way they want to feel appreciated. And we have data, we have online assessment I'm going to tell you about. We had over 350,000 people across the world take. It's in 7 languages. And with the exception of Singapore, um, words is the most frequently chosen one, but it's less than 50%. And it's even less chosen in Singapore. So if you only use words, whether that's praise or compliment or an email, and that's how you show appreciation, because a lot of times when we think of appreciation, we think of words, right? But if that's all you do from the get go, you're missing the mark with over 50% of your team members, which is not a good hit rate, right? And then that's not what we want to do in business as far as meeting the needs of our customers and clients, and clearly the same for our employees. So that's where the 5 languages of appreciation come in. And yes, they're the same in name as the 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and even physical touch. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to give you a real brief overview. Next webinar in February, we're going to go in depth in these, but let me just give you an intro to these. So words of affirmation are words that are affirming. We're affirming what we value about the person. And it can be spoken in our culture now. Lots of times it's written in a form, either a text or an email. And so we tell them, hey, thanks for doing this. You did a really great job on meeting the needs of our customers and did a timely way. Thanks. Okay. 46% of all employees choose words. So if you don't know somebody's language, that's a pretty good guess. If you do it privately versus publicly, you're probably not going to offend them. We know that at least 40% of the population doesn't want to be recognized in front of a large group. So that's not the way to go unless you're sure of it. So words, and basically we say use their name, tell specifically what they've done that you value or character that they've demonstrated and why it's important to you, either to you, the organization, or your clients. We did a poll. We got 90,000 people on our newsletter list. And we do polls occasionally. We ask them, what don't you like to hear? And one of the main things people said was, good job. Why? Because it's pretty generic. It doesn't mean anything, doesn't take any thought. It's not about them. At least they can't decipher that. So be specific. That's the key for using words in affirming people. You need to be specific about what they've done or what they've demonstrated that you value. Second language is quality time. Quality time is an interesting one that when we first started 12, 13 years ago, we developed this inventory that identified people's languages of appreciation. But pretty quickly got feedback. I had a manager say, okay, this team member likes quality time. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do? And we found out that just knowing the language isn't sufficient, that you also need to know the actions within the language. So we sort of retooled the inventory to identify not only the language or actions, because it differs, and it differs sort of generationally. For those of us that are older, or those of you that are older, it was about a relationship with your supervisor, right? That you got to get time with them and either share some observations or get input and instruction. And we really valued that. It made us feel valued that our supervisor or manager or even the owner spent time with us. For younger employees, that's not the case. They want time with their peers and their colleagues. In fact, those of us that are older, and you need to hear this. If you have a team member who you find that values quality time, it does not mean they want time with you. Okay, you may be great, you may be wonderful, super knowledgeable, yada yada, but that's not what they're looking for typically. They're wanting to go to lunch with friends, go out after work, maybe watch some sports, watch the Chiefs, win, hopefully, yay, and do that kind of thing. So you can get the language right. They may have time. In fact, I've had some team members say, my language is quality time, but I do not want time with my supervisor. They're pretty intense. I'm sort of shy, and it just sort of it intimidates me. So we've got to get the action right. Quality time is chosen by 26%, or about one of out of every four employees. So it's not high, as high as words for sure, but it's really important because um, people, when you don't spend time, and time is our most important resource now personally, they feel like they don't matter, or you don't care about them. Third language is acts of service. Acts of service is not rescuing a low performing team member. The context really is when you have one of those time limited projects that you got to get done and you're banging away on it. What's something that somebody can do to help you get through the day or the week better? And it can be as small as, bringing something in from the car or the truck, some supplies you need. It can be giving you some advice and helping you get through um, a computer program that you're not sure of. Um, I had one CEO tell me, he said, my language is get her done. Don't tell me stuff. Don't give me gifts. Just help me get things done and off my plate, and I'll know you're on my team. And that I know that you value what's important to me. And so it's interesting. Acts of service people, not only do they not choose words, but lots of times words are negative to them because they sort of have the sayings of, words are cheap. Don't tell me you support me, show me. And so it's important to these people to really show it actively. 21% of people choose that. So still a significant group, out of every five. And it's not only guys, it's guys and gals, and in all different kinds of industries. So again, there's some tips that we're going to go through next week to make it work, or next month to make sure that it works right. Because if you just go in and start cleaning up somebody's office and say, our office is a wreck, let me help you out, not going to go well. Okay, so there's some ways to deal with it. And by the way, if you ask them if you can help, their first response is going to be no, I'm good. Okay, almost always. So you got to push through that. Next one is tangible gifts. And in our context, it is not money, raises, bonuses, not fancy vacations. That's not what we're talking about. That's sort of in the employer employee relationship, and maybe a reward recognition program. God bless you, help share that with your team. But for us, tangible gifts are just small things that show that you're getting to know them as a person. And it could be their favorite cup of coffee or tea. It could be their favorite snack, maybe a gift card to a restaurant that they like, that they'd be able to go out and take their spouse out. That's a little bit of a reach for them otherwise. Or it can be gift cards. The gift cards are actually the second most desired gift after food, is the one that's shown the most. But gift cards, we did some research. I think we had 80,000 people we did research with, find out what kind of gift cards they want. And there's two groups, right? There's always two groups. One is that they want a generic gift card, a Visa or an Amazon or whatever, so they can choose what they want. Other people want a very specific one, so they can't just buy it on regular daily life stuff. Maybe at a bookstore, music store, iTunes, maybe a specific restaurant. So again, we want to look into and find out specifically what's going on. What's interesting, though, because a lot of rewards and recognition programs focus on rewards. And in fact, companies, I think it's pretty easy to say, waste millions of dollars every year giving gifts that are virtually meaningless as far as the other person valuing it. And we talk about that. But only 7% of employees actually choose gifts as the main way that they want to be shown appreciation. And I've had a number of people say, hey, if I never hear anything, they never stop by to see how I'm doing, they don't help me out when I need help on a project, and I get a gift and it's paid for by the company and not them, it feels pretty superficial. Now, what's interesting is gifts, along with one of the other languages, can really sort of multiply the effect, assuming it's a personal gift. And that's one of the key things about gifts, is that it needs to be about them. Maybe they're just starting to coach Little League baseball or soccer. You get them either a video or a magazine about that, or their favorite sports team. Mine's the Chiefs, for football. So don't get me a Patriots something. I don't even if I give it to somebody. So you got to get it right, and it's about the person. Physical touch. And you've all been waiting for this one, just dying about this one. So, to be honest, when we first started thinking about applying the languages to work, we thought, do we include physical touch? And we talked to people, and they'd say, I don't know, it seems a little bit iffy. Obviously, given the sexual and innuendos that can happen, but we decided to include it for two reasons. First of all, Dr. Chapman really, as studying anthropology, believes that we don't want to advocate a touchless society, even in the workplace, because within the right, healthy relationship in certain situations, physical touch is very meaningful, especially in healthcare, in senior care, and secondly, it happens. Okay, I mean I'm sort of practical. I'm like, well, it happens. What is it? When we talk to HR people, we got to have paramedics there because they're going to say, oh, we're going to get sued. Don't worry about it. We're talking about appropriate physical touch, not sort of those weird hugs that come up. But it's a spontaneous celebration, right? I mean, it's a high five when you finish a project. It's maybe a fist bump when you solve a problem, a congratulatory handshake. So it's that kind of thing. And only less than 1% of employees choose this, and it differs regionally, right? I mean, in the South, I lived in Atlanta for a while, and in the South, they give a lot of side hugs and that kind of thing. In New York, New Jersey, this is physical touch. It's, hey, you just sort of nod and keep your distance. So there's regional differences, but for some of our employees and colleagues that are Hispanic or from Portugal, Spain, Brazil, that are sort of the Latin cultures, no touch feels very cold and impersonal to them. And so now, always the person who's receiving the touch is the one who determines what's appropriate, but it happens, so you don't have to wag out about it. Now, here's a fact, and you got to pay attention to the fact that I'm using the word fact because psychologists hardly ever can, but we absolutely do know how to train team members to successfully communicate authentic appreciation. And a key part of that is that we're training team members. As we're going to talk here in a second, it's not just for supervisors, managers, business owners. It's too much responsibility to lay on them, and it doesn't work as well as if they do it along with colleagues. And that's what we have found. And we've done it. I'll throw out, we got a bunch of different clients that have used us. Lots of times, not all the way like Microsoft, not all the way across, but in certain divisions. The Mayo Clinics, NASA, Chick-fil-A, Genentech, and I say, hey, if we can do it with TSA, we can do it with anybody because, man, they got a tough job. Their job is to provide services the clients don't want. So, in small businesses, medical settings, schools, nonprofits, all different kinds of organizations, and not only here in the U.S. but across the world. So remember, the first principle is not everybody feels appreciated in the same way. The second one is that you want to know that they're valued by both their supervisors and their colleagues. This has really been a cultural shift over time. And so just hearing something or getting something from their supervisor or manager is fine, but more and more, because if you're discouraged or having a bad day, who knows first? I mean, it's your coworker, right? And so if they can encourage you, that's really powerful. So we found that appreciation is really not top down, whereas recognition is. Recognition is pretty organizational. It can come from HR, from management. It's fine. It's good. But one of the cool things is that we found appreciation flows in every direction. That it's not according to the org chart. I mean, it can be, but it can be from the receptionist to a director or a division leader. It can be from somebody in accounting to somebody in IT because they help them get their computer to work right, right? And so it frees it up, and it's person to person. It's not positional. It's that I value and appreciate you. And again, it doesn't have to be work related. For example, let's say you have a single mother who works on your team, committed to her kids, loves her kids, is there for them. And it warms your heart. And you say, Cynthia, I am just really impressed with how much and deeply you love your kids. And I'm just blown away about that. And yet you still get the work done. And is that about work? No. Is it about her? Yes. Is it of value to her? Yes. Is it going to create a positive connection in the workplace? Absolutely. So it's not always performance based. Now, question is, okay, how do you know what people's language is? Well, we developed this online assessment, and we've had 350,000 people taking it, and about, I don't know, 250 a day, it seems like. And what it does, it identifies it. You go online, it takes 15 to 20 minutes to take. It identifies your primary language of appreciation, the one that's most important to you, your secondary language, and those two often together are quite powerful. Let's say words and time together. It identifies your least valued language, which we identify as your blind spot. It's the thing that you don't really think about because it's not that important to you. It's like, why would somebody want to spend time with somebody else if you're an introvert and sort of shy, or, whereas, or verbal praise is like, what are words? They don't mean anything. But it helps you identify that because you're going to have team members who have that language and be able to help you develop actions and be sensitive to what's important to them. Like I said, we went from just identifying the language to what are the specific actions within your language, and also from whom you want those, because you may want to get together and watch sports over the weekend with your colleagues, but you're not going to invite your supervisor. And so we let you identify um, what you want and from whom, so that we get very specific. And we also, in our expanded version of it, included how you don't want to be appreciated, so that your team members don't sort of accidentally step in it and make a mistake and embarrass you, or create hard feelings when they didn't mean to. And so you take this, it creates the individual report, boom, right there, PDF. We have group summary reports for teams, so that you can share it with your team members. Going to wind up here, and we got time for questions and lots of stuff I didn't address this time, we're going to talk about next time. But one of the key things is, especially those of you that are leaders and structural, and I've dealt with engineers and computer programmers and all that, and a lot of those people, they like to do a Gantt chart or Excel spreadsheet and sort of figure it out, but they never get it done. So the most important thing is to start somewhere with somebody, okay? And let me give you three groups of people to think about. One is just the person that you work with on a day-to-day basis, that it's pretty easy. You see what they do, you value them, that if they didn't do what they did, your daily life would be tougher, right? So that's one group. Second group are people who are discouraged. One of the things that we found is that appreciation and encouragement are very parallel. Appreciation is largely focused on the past, what they have done. Encouragement is about the present and the future, that you're coming alongside to encourage them. And so the same actions that can be showing appreciation can be used for encouragement. You bring them in, their favorite snack, and say, hey, hang in there, keep going. I know you're hitting these challenges, keep going. The other thing, remember that statistic, 79% of the people who leave voluntarily cite a lack of appreciation as one of the main reasons they're leaving. If you have a key team member that you don't want to lose, you better be on the ball, Jack, and start, or Jane, and start sharing appreciation with them, because if not, there's a good chance they're going to be approached by somebody else and they're going to be on the trading block. So if you don't want to lose them, you need to really focus on those people. So what do you do? First of all, think of somebody, and this is what I right now, wherever you are, whether it's your phone or a pen and paper, think of somebody, write their name, write their initials, say, I'd like to encourage or show appreciation of this person. It's just be partly, it's best, some great research on habits. And the best way to start a habit is with a small step that you can do. So think of somebody that you want to communicate to. For what? Remember, it's not just, that you say thanks, but, it's like, hey, Patricia, thanks for staying late the other night and cleaning up the boardroom and the conference room, because that way we were ready for our team meeting the next morning and didn't have to worry about cleaning up the room. So name what they did specifically and why it was important to you or somebody else. So identify the specifics, and then determine how and when. Are you going to say it? Are you going to send a note? Lots of times for introverts, Writing it is easier. You don't have to deal with the face-to-face kind of thing, and you can think about it a little bit. Keep it short. Doesn't have to be long. Doesn't have to be super deep. But it's just like, hey, I know she did this. Thanks for doing that. Or if you know that they value time with people, invite them to get together for lunch and go out for lunch. One of the things we found about that is that some people like to go out to lunch and talk about work, and other people like to go out to lunch and not talk about work. So you got to figure out what specifics. And one of the interesting things is it doesn't take much to make a big difference. The key is getting the right language and action for that person. And so that's where we make your job easier and the team's easier to be able to find out from one another. Going to do another webinar here in a month. I'm going to go into more detail of each of the languages. Gave you just a brief overview. I want to also touch on research and what we know about how when team members feel valued, it improves their retention, and also it makes it easier to recruit and hire new people because you've got a message that they're going to hear from current employees. And also, and I'm doing a lot of speaking and writing on this right now, just about how to communicate appreciation to remote and hybrid team members. So we're going to talk about that next time. Yeah, it's sort of retention, recruitment, and remote are the 3 R's that I'm identifying about employer challenges. So we're going to talk about that. And just a reminder that if you, I'll let Ken share how to communicate, but I'll share the handout version of the slides along with, I'll give you a sample version of our inventory report so you can see that. But just be thankful for the team members with whom you get to work. I'm sure you all have quality team members, but along with that, enjoy the day. Do something fun, break out a little bit, and whether it's tell a joke, smiling goes a long way. So I just encourage you to do that. So I'll stop there, and Ken, we can address any questions that people might have. Okay.
Oh, fantastic, Paul. This has been great, and it's been fun to kind of watch the chat here as you were presenting and see folks from Haiti, Denmark, Seychelles, and around the world, and of course all over the U.S. and chiming in. As you could probably expect, you get to the point about physical touch, and some of our wonderful FCCI members jumped in right away and said, "Hey, listen, you come to Phoenix, you're going to get a hug." I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
So just a
Well,
lot of
you got to
great
be careful with
interjection.
that. I've had people say, "I just need to give you a hug," and I don't necessarily say this, but my thought is, well, your need to give me a hug doesn't necessarily equate my willingness to receive it.
Desire to
So,
receive it.
yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Awesome. Well, let me just go ahead. You had mentioned as far as the opportunity to receive the information that the PowerPoint and so forth. Let me just pop this up here quick. So, yes, if you go ahead and go over to fcci.org and go to the events menu, you'll see the webinar. And you can still register. Go ahead and register there, and all those who are registered will receive the PowerPoint deck and that MBA inventory sample report, which will be sent out as well. So we just want to make sure that go ahead and register if you haven't yet. Some of you popped in by social media and so may not have actually registered on our website. And we want to make sure you get that. We did have a few questions pop in here today, so let me just grab one of those and let's take a look here. We've got a question coming in from Haiti. Why most of the business owners don't care about their employees. However, they earn money because of their employees. And I know that's a common concern.
Yeah, the issue, unfortunately, is that a lot of us have been influenced by a culture which really believes people are just another resource to use to make money. And it's not the same as when we talk about human capital, but that, there are places, and you can be a successful, quote, financially business person for at least for a short time and treat people really crummy. It will come back and haunt you at some point. I've had business owners say, "Hey, we pay them. That's our appreciation." I understand that, but those places have the highest rates of turnover in comparison to their competitors or other industries.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Another question that came in from one of our team members, Steve Campbell. Where or how would you suggest as a starting point for implementation for a small business? What are some good ideas for how to get this rolling?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. And I'm just going to be honest. Different leaders are going to have different levels of interest, and that's okay. And so, if sort of like individually, don't try to fake it. If it's like, yeah, I'm sort of into this, but it's not sort of who I am, but I know our HR person or our VP of personnel is really about this. Go ahead and delegate it and start there. Most organizations that we work with don't start at the top and go down. We usually are invited in, or somebody finds out about our resources. They could be just a department head or a supervisor of a certain part, and they start with their team, and then it sort of grows from there. So start wherever you are, and don't feel like you have to get a full buy-in from the organization initially. If we do it well, and we obviously have the book, and it's audio book and ebook, and it's in different languages. That's a good place to start. Our website is appreciationatwork.com, and it's the word at appreciationatwork.com. And we've got a learn tab that has all kinds of free videos, some articles, probably signing up for our blog, because I put out a weekly blog on different topics, and just start to become familiar with it, and talk to a couple team members about it, and see what they think.
That's great. And folks, if you haven't looked in the description, even on the YouTube channel today, that website is listed there. So if you're looking for how do I find more information about all of this appreciation at work and the MBA inventory and how to access that, you can definitely find that there in the description. So feel free to jump there. I've got another question here. Is there one impact story with a company or person you've worked with that really stands out in your mind? That kind of puts you
Yeah,
on the spot
there's a
there a little
fun.
bit.
Yeah, there's a fun one. Actually, last January and February, the a reporter at the New York Times contacted me and had heard about our stuff, uh, and wrote an article. But she interviewed one of our clients, and they are a mining company and commercial chemical. They mine stuff and then crush it up and make like calcium carbonate or something like that. And and they're in South Dakota and Wyoming and Colorado. And so she interviewed them, and it's fascinating because these miners. Let me tell you what. Talk about a tough group to start out with. I went, and they had all the leaders and supervisors. So I mean, lead truckers and cement workers and all that. And they admit they were sort of skeptical, but one of the things is the core principles are true, but we also have to apply them contextually to what fits. Anyway, over time, they've adopted it. It's part of what they do. It's part of after actually somebody you have to go through your probation period before they let you take the inventory. And then when they do that, we have symbols for each of the languages, and they have stickers that they put on their hard hats that they got. And we have fun with it. And
Mm,
and
that's
so
great.
it's about being authentic, because that was part
Mm,
of it. It's not just going through the motions, but
mm,
teaching them how to do it practically and with genuineness.
yeah. Well, here's a very practical question that's come in. Is the MBA report something a supervisor does with a team, and who can see the results?
Yeah, so the inventory is designed for each person to take, and they automatically get the results. We can set it up as a group team sort of unit, and have a group summary report. If you don't do that, I mean, it's sort of like up to you to figure out, like in an intranet kind of thing or a bulletin board, to post the results. So
Mm,
it doesn't automatically go to other people. But if the team leader or the supervisor sets it up, you can do that, and then it shows each person's language and their actions. And it's a really nice visual resource for everybody to have sort of at their desk.
that's great. Another question that came in. What would you suggest for a cadence to implement training and reinforce applications in companies?
Wow, cool. Well, the way that we found the most success is to start with one or two pilot groups, a couple of teams that have a supervisor or a leader that's interested in this. We don't want to force it on people. one of the things I argue against is I don't want to do a top-down everybody implementation, because that automatically undermines the perceived authenticity, because we got to do this. But what we found is that we start with a couple of pilot groups, and so that they learn about it. We help deal. Every place has its own unique things about scheduling, meetings and communicating, and so help make that go well. And it just sort of grows, because people, it's sort of a positive peer influence. People say, well, how come they get to do that and we aren't doing that, right? And so it's like, I want to know. And what's been fascinating to me, a lot of managers and leaders taken a lot of different kinds of personality inventories, but your frontline people haven't, and they really enjoy this. They view this as sort of a self-discovery of what I want and what I'm like, and about their friends. And so starting sort of small, working it, and then growing it out from there tends to work well.
Excellent. Well, Paul, I think that is the questions we've received. If you had any other closing thoughts or comments, otherwise, I think we've had a wonderful time together, and very thankful for what we've gained here today, and definitely looking forward to the ongoing webinar series. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just share,
Yeah.
Ken, just as we leave, as followers of Christ, we're called to love in word and in deed. And this is an amazing opportunity to learn what encourages and makes other people feel valued, makes them feel loved, even though we don't use that term. And so as leaders and leaders in the kingdom, it's just a great tool to build a sense of value among your team. And I tell you what, it builds loyalty that people stick. If you got problems with people leaving, sort of like a revolving door, this can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul. And on that, I'll just put up the reminder here that we are going to be continuing with this study and this time together next month, February 28th, 1 p.m. The registration for that will be available soon. And so you'll see that come through, and look forward to having you register and be a part of that with us next month, as Dr. White, as he mentioned, will go much deeper in depth with those 5 languages of appreciation. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.